The upcoming 2021 college football season marks the 40th anniversary of a very special Iowa Hawkeye football team. The 1981 Hawkeyes broke through and earned a trip to the Rose Bowl after 2 decades of dormancy in the 60s and 70s. Hi, I'm Michael D. Lee, and I worked at WHO Radio in Des Moines during that 1981 magical season. On the afternoon of January 1, 1982, WHO aired a program that I scripted and produced entitled Road to the Roses, the Hayden Fry Story, as part of the pregame leading up to the Rose Bowl against the University of Washington. What you'll hear now for the first time in nearly 40 years is WHO's late sports director Jim Zabel interviewing late Iowa head coach Hayden Fry as they look back on the 1981 season, plus highlights from selected games, featuring Zabel on the play-by-play, with legendary former Iowa football coach Forrest Evashevski on the color commentary. Now, sit back, relax, and relive that special 1981 Iowa Hawkeye football season. Here is Road to the Roses, the Hayden Fry Story.
3 seconds, 2 seconds, 1 second, 2 saves on the board. The Hawkeyes are in the Rose Bowl. The Hawkeyes are in the Rose Bowl.
This is Jim Zabel, and the sounds you just heard captured one of the most incredible moments I have ever encountered in my 32 years of sports broadcasting. And I don't have to tell you how excited I was over the events of November 21st, 1981, when the Hawkeyes capped a simply unbelievable season by earning a trip to the Rose Bowl. As unbelievable as this story is, it does have a beginning and an ending and a central theme. And that's why we're calling it Road to the Roses, the Hayden Fry Story, because Hayden Fry is the central theme. And in the next 90 minutes, we're going to bring you the story from the lips of the man who created it, Hayden Fry, and a recap of what he created through the sounds of our own WHO Radio play-by-play coverage of the 1981 season on the Road to the Roses. Stay tuned. In just a moment, we'll be back with Iowa coach Hayden Fry. First of all, Hayden, I want to start out right at the very beginning in your relationship with the University of Iowa and ask you a question maybe you haven't been asked before. Can you remember back where you were, what you were doing when you were first contacted about the job at the University of Iowa roughly 3 years ago?
Jim, I feel pretty confident that I was preparing for the last or next to the last ball game of the season at North Texas State. And I received a call from the director of athletics, Bump Elliott, and he talked to me that they had not made a decision at the University of Iowa, but that it appeared that something would have to be done, and if they did have a change in the coaching situation, would I be interested enough to listen to hear what they had to say? And of course, my dad taught me when I was a young fella, it doesn't cost anything to be a good listener, and I said certainly I'd be most interested.
What led Bump Elliott to you?
I'm not positive. I think it's probably several different things, Jim. Bump and I have been friends for years. Our football teams had played against one another when I was at SMU back in the early 60s, and he was at Michigan. And I had followed his career. He had followed mine. I had become a good friend of his brother, Pete Elliott, who, by the way, had offered me a job several years before at the University of Miami to become the head coach down there. And and I think that Pete Elliott had watched my ball club play several times, and he was impressed with the type of football we played. And I think Pete probably had confirmed Bump's suspicions that I might be, at least in the market, to be approached in regard to being a head coach at the University of Iowa.
Well, then, Hayden, how long did you think it over, and what were the elements that went into your making a decision to come to a school that had had a lot of losing seasons behind it?
Well, there were 2 different things in my mind, some minuses, some negative things on the part at North Texas State, and some positive things on the part of Iowa. The negative things at North Texas State, we've been very successful in turning the program around and won 19 of our last 22 ball games, and yet we had not been invited to participate in a bowl game because we were independent. And, in fact, we'd been unable to attract ABC television, and as a coach, I really felt hurt for my players because I felt my players deserved to go to a bowl game. They'd earned the right with their 10-1 and 9-2 seasons. And I let this be known publicly, and I had a few guys take cheap shots at me that who just Hayden Fry think he is, North Texas State going to a bowl game. You know, they kind of look down their nose at North Texas State. It's really a wonderful institution, an institution of 22 or 23,000, a state institution. But they'd been in the Missouri Valley Conference until I came on board. We won the Missouri Valley the first year, and they'd been, I believe, 0-10 the previous year, and I thought we'd done a pretty good job. And when I took the job at North Texas, I asked the Board of Regents if they'd give me a couple of years to evaluate the Missouri Valley, and if I wasn't satisfied, what did it look like as far as going independent, because I had enough friends in the athletic world that would give us some major games. And I had in mind the University of Texas and University of Houston and Oklahoma State and Tennessee, where we could really upgrade the quality of the opposition and bring some prestige to North Texas, because I've always had great faith in my ability to hire outstanding assistant coaches, and along with myself, I felt like we could win wherever we were located. So they made me that commitment when I was hired at North Texas State. Well, lo and behold, we won the championship the first year. Sure enough, didn't go to a bowl game, didn't get on TV. 2 years later, we went independent, and I got the big names on the schedule, the Tennessees, Texas, Houston, all those people, and we did an extremely good job. And but those were the negative things. The fact that my players were not rewarded because of their wonderful effort, that really hurt. So I was looking for a place, so to speak, to move on to, where not only would it help satisfy Hayden Fry, but my coaching staff. And my coaching staff in North Texas were very, very influential in my decision to come to Iowa. They wanted to come to a place that was in a great conference. Well, we figured the Big Ten was the finest conference in the world. They wanted to go to a place so that if we were successful, we could play in a bowl game. Well, but then the Big Ten had removed the restrictions that you can only participate in a Rose Bowl, so we figured that, hey, there's going to probably be 4 teams in the Big Ten each year participate in a bowl game, and just maybe someday we could become good enough that we could go to Rose Bowl. And those things were very, very influential in me even coming up to Iowa to evaluate the situation. And then once I arrived at Iowa, I'd done my homework. We'd studied 3 films that Bump Elliott had sent me in regards to the quality of the football, the quality of the players we would inherit. We went down the program and checked out who were juniors, sophomores, and freshmen, the guys that would be returning, and then looked at the quality, the style of football being played at the Big Ten and what Iowa was doing. And we were impressed that we could improve on that, and we were impressed with some of the young men that we saw in action, because as you know, Coach Cummings and his staff had done a good job. He was fired, but I've seen a lot of good coaches fired through the years, so I knew it wasn't all Coach Cummings' fault. There had to be some other things. So that's when I accepted the invitation to visit the campus and to really explore the things I felt like were necessary in making a winner.
Well, I guess what you're trying to tell me is the right program or the right job and the right man met at the right time. Is that right?
That's right, Jim. It's strictly chemistry. You have to have the right ingredients, and first of all, you've got to want to know that you really want to win. Number 2, you've got to be willing to commit yourself as a university that you're going to provide whatever's necessary to win, as long as it's ethical and within the rules. And number 3 is, and the biggest thing of all is, you've got to know how to win. So one of my first questions to President Boyd and Bump and the other people were, do you want to win? And they said, yes. I said, are you willing to commit the university to really building our program up on the level of the wrestling program and the basketball program? The program's really successful. They said yes. And then the third one really stumped them. I asked them if they had really investigated Michigan and Ohio State and Purdue, the people that have really been winning the Big Ten, to see what they're doing, to see, you got to know how to win. What does it take? And they kind of said yes, and they kind of said no. Well, I knew they were honest people. They just didn't come out and say yes, because if they did, then my question was going to be, why hadn't you been doing it? But they didn't say that, and they kind of captured me right then, because I knew they were honest people. And they'd already told me that they would commit themselves to helping us, and they really wanted a winning program. So I knew I could do the third thing. I knew what it took to win. But I wanted to find out if they had explored that people had really been winning, to see what they'd been doing. And so from that time on, I knew that Iowa, we could win here.
No question about it, Hayden, because I saw a lot of coaches come down the pike here, being around as long as I have, that scratched and clawed and worried and cried and tried to get the job done. But you were the right man at the right time for the right job. First year, you just, those dramatic near wins, let's say, over Nebraska, Oklahoma, and all the things that happened. Then the setbacks of the following year. But let's take this season, the season that led the road to the roses. When did you start? Here's a team that beat you 57-0. And still, I guess you got to look back at the season here and say the Nebraska game was the key to the whole thing, really, because that really turned things around for you. When did you start feeling that you had a shot at these guys in that first game of the season back on September 12th?
Well, Jim, this may be hard to understand, but I had that feeling when I packed my bags and left North Texas State to come up here that we had a chance against anyone. And that first year when we were defeated 24-21 on a field goal late in the ball game after having led by 14 points, I knew that we had a chance. The next year, as you know, being blown out 57-0, there were a lot of things involved in that particular game, which were blown out of proportion in the news media and so forth to some extent, but some of the things were very true. Perhaps that helped motivate our preparation to get ready for Nebraska, but the key was the fact is just for our Hawkeye football players to really believe that they did have an honest chance to win the ball game, regardless of the great tradition of Nebraska, bowl games each year, fighting for the Big 8 championship. We acknowledged they had a super program. I just think the world of Tom Osborne and his program, and I've even publicly stated, gee whiz, one of our objectives is to build our program like Nebraska's, the red shirts, the walk-ons. I mean, it's just fantastic what Bob Devaney did, and then was inherited by Tom Osborne, and he's just kept it right in there, batting 1,000. So to defeat a program that good in the first ball game, without question, was the most important victory since I've been here, because it gave us the confidence that we could tee the ball up and compete with anyone in any ball game.
The Hawkeyes scored the first time they had the ball on offense all season. Coach Hayden Fry called timeout as quarterback Pete Gales and company faced a 2nd down and 7. And whatever the Hawkeye coaches told Gales worked out, because the play right after the timeout was the highlight play of the Hawkeye touchdown drive against the Huskers.
Power I formation for the Hawkeyes, and slamming over the left side, a big gain. Eddie Phillips still running inside the 20, down to the 17-yard line. First down, Eddie Phillips on a straight power smash.
And 2 plays later was Phillips again for the Hawks' only touchdown against Nebraska.
Goal to go. Hawkeyes into the line of scrimmage. It's an Iowa touchdown. Iowa touchdown. Eddie Phillips dives across the left side, and the crowd is going wild. Listen to him. Eddie Phillips and Pete Gale, take your hat off to these guys, and Hayden Fry is doing exactly that. He's slapping Eddie Phillips on the back as he comes off, and now the PAT attempt, Iowa marching from its own 34-yard line, 7 plays, or 44-yard line, 7 plays, 44 yards. And Lon Olenzak will attempt the PAT. Jimmy Frazier will hold. Eddie Phillips dives in from 3 yards. Kick is up. A bullet goes through the uprights. It's Iowa 7 and Nebraska nothing. 9:16 to go in a thrilling first quarter.
And the 2 teams exchanged possessions a couple more times in the first quarter, but on Nebraska's 3rd possession, the Hawkeyes came up with a play which led to the rest of the Hawkeyes scoring against Nebraska, and what proved to be the margin of victory against a team that is now challenging for the national championship.
3rd down and 11. James Erb comes in replacing Todd Simonson at linebacker for the Hawkeyes. Nebraska now uses 2 flankers out to the left of the formation. Maurer goes back to throw. May decide to run with the ball. The ball is batted down, and is it intercepted? It is. Are they going to rule it an interception?
No, yes, I think it did.
They are going to rule. I thought he batted the thing down, but Brad Webb grabbed the ball out of the air, bobbled it. It did not touch the ground, so the Hawkeyes come up with an interception.
And the field goal came a short time later.
The ball is spotted. The kick is up in the air, and I believe it is good. The kick is good. Lon Olenzak kicks the ball, and the Hawkeyes lead it by a score of 10-0 on a 35-yard field goal.
And the half ended with the Hawkeyes up 10-0 over Nebraska. The Hawks continue to bottle up Nebraska to start the 3rd quarter, but the Huskers weren't about to give up. Their defense recovered an Iowa fumble, setting the Huskers up for their only score against the Hawks that day.
A fumble on the play. Who's going to get the ball? I think it's Nebraska. Trying to hit in there is Eddie Phillips. Nebraska, an opportunistic team, grabs the ball away. They'll be in their deepest penetration of Iowa territory.
And the Huskers started their comeback drive, converting on a 4th down and 5 from the Iowa 28 at one point. A few plays later, Nebraska was knocking on the door of the Iowa goal line, and Husker running back Roger Craig got the call for 6.
2nd down and goal to go for Nebraska. They're on the 1-yard line of Iowa. The crowd quiets down. Maurer at quarterback for the Cornhuskers. Here's Nebraska now trying to drive in there. He makes it. A dive by Roger Craig. They say he crosses the plane of the goal line. Some of the Iowa fans are not in agreement as Craig just took off and dove. And so the Huskers now get on the scoreboard for the first time in this game. The score is Iowa 10 and Nebraska 6.
And the conversion was good. Once again, it looked as if Nebraska was destined to repeat 1979's game all over again, when they came from 14 points down to beat the Hawkeyes 24-21. But the Hawks defense stiffened once again and stopped the Nebraska drive with about 3.5 minutes to go in the game.
This Iowa defense, Evie, may be finally getting a little bit weary on this hot day.
Well, I don't know. I think they're just being overly cautious, and they can't afford to get too cautious because they'll soon be in field goal range.
Okay, Woodard flanks wide of the formation on 1st down and 10, Nebraska. They're on the Iowa 35-yard line. And now a fumble on the play, I believe, recovered by Iowa. The fumble on the play. The Hawkeyes recover. Into the line of scrimmage this time. Nebraska running Roger Craig. Mark Maurer fumbled, handing off to Craig, and falling on top of the ball is Mark Bortz. Mark Bortz recovers the Nebraska fumble. Oh, man.
So Nebraska had been stopped for about 3.5 minutes to go in the game, but it seemed as if the Hawkeyes actually wanted to give the game to the Huskers because 2 plays later, it was Iowa's Hawkeyes who were plagued with fumbleitis.
Big play, the biggest one of the game for the Hawkeyes. Now on 3rd down, breaking over the left side is Fletcher. Fights for yardage. He fumbles the ball. Nebraska recovers. Fletcher has the ball ripped away from him and fumbled right back again to Alan Whitey. So turnabout on the field of play as Phil Fletcher is really hit.
But the Huskers couldn't capitalize either, and the Hawks were almost ready to scoop up and almost fumble by Nebraska's Roger Craig.
So now we know about what Nebraska has to do or probably will do. And that is with 3rd down and 10, we're going to see 2 more pass plays or a pass play and a field goal. Depending, of course, what happens there. Todd Brown flanks to the right side of the formation. Lively flanks to the other side. Maurer is at quarterback. Here's Maurer, hands off. Big hole over the left side. Roger Craig drops the ball. Recovered by Iowa. Roger Craig fumbles again. Recovered by Iowa. Or are they going to rule a dead ball?
I believe they're going to rule that his knee hit the ground on the 42-yard line, and Nebraska will get one more shot.
These fans are not going to be happy. The ball was fumbled away from Roger Craig, and the official rules that his knee touched the ground, and the play stopped before he fumbled the ball.
So the Huskers were given another chance with about 1.5 minutes to play. But again, the Hawkeyes soared to the occasion.
4th down and 19 for Nebraska. Okay, Mark Maurer goes along the line of scrimmage. He looks, he throws downfield. It's incomplete. It's the Hawks' ball. Hawkeyes get the ball with 1:25 to go, and how much more drama can we crowd into this afternoon of football? The first game of the season, the biggest crowd ever to see, maybe the biggest or certainly one of the biggest upsets in the history of Iowa football in the making right now. Iowa 10, Nebraska 7, 1:25 left to play. Wow.
But the Hawks couldn't kill the clock, and for the final time, Nebraska had his chance to pull the game out of the fire. But the Huskers' hopes turned to ashes on this play right here.
Here's action, and the ball is intercepted by the Hawkeyes. Mark Morrow back to throw, and Lou King intercepts a deflected pass intended for Scott Woodard. The Hawkeyes have the ball deep in Nebraska territory. 39 seconds to play. The place is going absolutely wild. Iowa 10, Nebraska 7. You realize this Nebraska team led the nation in almost every statistical, offensive, and defensive department, and I'm telling you, the Iowa sideline, Hayden Fry and his coaching staff and his players can hardly restrain themselves, and they're only going to have to do that for 39 more seconds. Tom Osborne has lost only to one other Big Ten team, and that was way back in 1974 by 1 point to Wisconsin. Gales falls on top of the football. The clock is running. Iowa 10 and Nebraska 7. Spectacular.
One more play, Jim, and it's all over because Nebraska's used all their timeouts.
Nebraska has used its timeout, and the crowd is standing up and cheering the Hawkeyes. You talk about great upsets in the history of Iowa football. You're witnessing it right now. Reggie Roby has averaged close to 56 yards with his punch. Once again, Gales falls on top of the football. The cadence count, and it is an Iowa victory over Nebraska. The final score, Iowa 10 and Nebraska 7. Can you believe it? Can you believe it?
Hayden, after Nebraska came UCLA. That turned out to be almost a remarkably easy victory from the press box compared to the struggle maybe and the worry about Nebraska. Were you surprised at the way you handled UCLA?
Well, very definitely, Jim. We knew that UCLA had a superior football team. We'd done our homework during the spring and summer, and we had prepared, even in spring training, for the first three opponents. And UCLA, obviously, we had a psychological advantage in that. Who are they to become afraid of Iowa? They just defeated Wisconsin. They've got all these great people coming back from a great football team. We slipped up on them. We had a psychological advantage, but we had a double-edged sword because we just defeated Nebraska, And gee whiz, we had everything going for us. And then our defensive staff in particular did a super defensive game plan for UCLA, and our offense kept the ball away from them long periods of time, and it just all came together, and that was a great, great victory.
The 1981 Iowa football Hawkeyes were nothing short of amazing after 3 games of the season. They improved their record to 2-1 with a 20-7 thrashing of then number 6 UCLA. A potent UCLA offensive machine was completely shut down by the Iowa defense, and Bruins quarterback Tom Ramsey often found himself in the company of an Iowa Hawkeye or 2 or even 3 when he tried to get a pass away. In fact, the Hawks dominated the UCLA offense so completely that UCLA scored only after an Iowa fumble deep in its own territory. Iowa's upset of UCLA marked the second time in 3 weeks they had knocked off one of the wire service's top 10 teams, and people were starting to raise some eyebrows, wondering what Hayden Fry and company were up to in Iowa City. Well, they probably never could have guessed that the UCLA victory was a harbinger of even bigger and better things for the Hawkeye future. On the Hawks' second offensive possession, they were looking at a 4th and 1 at the UCLA 35, but the Hawkeyes' Eddie Phillips kept the drive alive.
Iowa now lines up in the I formation. UCLA with a 7-man defensive front. Here's the handoff, and a big hole on the right side. Eddie Phillips has the first down.
Well, the next play, quarterback Pete Gales, who suffered an injury later in the UCLA game, flipped a pass to Phil Blacher.
First down, Iowa on the 33-yard line. UCLA, Gales back to throw. May decide to run, and he does throw, and it's caught down to the 25-yard line. Phil Blacher, I have no idea how he got that football.
And 3 plays later, Gales did it all himself.
Gales with the ball. He's down at the 10. He's at the 5. It's a touchdown. Beautiful run by Gales, faking into the line, delaying it, bootlegging it.
The conversion was good, and it was 7-0 Iowa with 5:02 left to go in the first quarter. UCLA did come back in the second quarter, however, thanks to a Hawkeye fumble.
Drop play up the middle, and a fumble. Who gets the ball? I believe it's UCLA's. Granger had the ball ripped away from him.
I think UCLA has it.
A fumble.
The 20-yard line.
He just ripped the ball right away from Granger. He was carrying it under his arm, tucked under his arm. Martin Moss falls on top of it. Big break for UCLA.
And with about 11 minutes to go before halftime, the Bruins tied the game.
UCLA now getting an endless number of first downs, has it first and goal to go, about 2 or 3 inches away from the goal line. Tight end in motion again, and now he dives across the line of scrimmage. Looks like
a touchdown.
Ramsey gets the touchdown.
And the teams entered the locker room tied at 7. In the second half, the Hawkeyes must have caught some sort of black and gold fever. They put together one of their best drives in the victory against UCLA, marching relentlessly down the field. Hawkeye quarterback Pete Gales again showed himself to be a dangerous option quarterback when he ran for a first down on this play.
The big thing that Iowa's got going now, Jim, is momentum. They look sharp, they have confidence, and now that they've picked up about 3 good first downs, they're going to be tough. If they can keep this up, they're going to pick them.
Okay, and it's Olenzak flanked to the wide side of the formation, and here's Gales. He fakes the handoff, starts to run with the ball, and Gales points out his interference, and it gets all the way down to the 22-yard line. Nice block out there by Olenzak.
Unfortunately for the Hawkeyes, that was a play that Lon Olenzak was injured on. But he was able to redshirt and will be back with the Hawkeyes next year. A few plays later, the heretofore unheard of Tom Nickel trotted onto the field and provided the points the Hawkeyes needed to hold on.
Here's the kick. It's high enough, it's long enough, and is it good? It is good! Through the uprights, Tom Nickel becomes a new Iowa star, and the Iowa Hawkeyes take the lead over UCLA 10-7.
On UCLA's second possession of the second half, fate seemed to be smiling on the Hawkeyes once again as James Erb provided the heroics.
Now back to pass again is Ramsey. He looks, he starts to run. A flag is thrown. He throws one downfield, and it is intercepted by the Hawkeyes again. Iowa has the ball this time. James Erb, known for his fade at linebacker, got in front of the intended receiver. Mike Young picked off the ball. Flag is down at the same time. I think, however, it's a penalty against UCLA.
Well, that penalty was refused, and with about 6 minutes to go in the third quarter, the Hawkeye defense had come up with a big play, just as they continued to do the rest of the season. As the fourth quarter started, Iowa fans could smell another upset, and it had just been 2 weeks before that Iowa pulled off miracle number 1 of the 1981 season, beating the vaunted Big Red of Nebraska by a 10-7 count. As the fourth quarter moved on, so did the Hawkeyes. They threatened to put the game away early in the fourth quarter with a long drive. But the Hawks didn't send the Bruins into hibernation, at least not at this point.
The way Iowa's blocking and running, there's no way that I see that UCLA is going to keep them out of their end zone if the Hawks can avoid a mistake, such as offside, holding, or a fumble. They'll play the ball game. You know, they made a great drive from their own 32 down to the 5.
They certainly have, and Mike Hufford and John Alder both in there. The double tight end, they go to the power I formation. Gordy Bohannon at quarterback, and here's a dive into the middle. The ball fumbled, and inside the 5, UCLA recovers, and I'm afraid. Diving in there, Bleacher is hit hard, Evie, and once again, fumbleitis. Stymies the Hawkeye.
Without those 3 fumbles, Iowa would have a comfortable lead right now.
But as it turned out, that fumble set up the play which bagged the Bruins of UCLA. On a third down play, UCLA quarterback Tom Ramsey found himself in trouble, and it spelled 6 points for the Hawkeyes.
Third down and 8 for UCLA. They're on their own 5-yard line, and Ramsey back to throw. He's being rushed, and he is thrown back for safety. Fumbles the ball. UCLA picks it up. Who gets the football? I believe it's an Iowa touchdown. The Hawks recover in the end zone. It's an Iowa touchdown, and they're going crazy. The ball squirted away as they got to Ramsey. He tried to fall back on top of it, and Mark Bortz scores a touchdown for the defense. The Iowa Hawkeyes have scored. They lead UCLA 16-7, and listen to this crowd.
UCLA had to punt on its next possession, and Iowa got the ball and held on to it for a while as well, because the Bruins were called for roughing the kicker at a critical juncture of the game.
He's standing on his own 20-yard line. UCLA will go into a 10-man rush. Here's Roby. Puts the ball. Oh, barely got it away. And he is roughing the kicker on Roby. The flag is thrown, and the tremendous kick down to the 12-yard line.
But it will be first down for Iowa.
Roughing the kicker against UCLA.
Iowa's final score against UCLA was set up by quarterback Gordy Bohannon, who at the time was subbing for the injured Pete Gales. Here's what happened on the play immediately following the roughing the kicker call against UCLA.
Here's Bohannon now. He retains the ball. He has open field. He's at the 40. He's at the 35, the 30, and knocked out of bounds on the 25-yard line. Gordy Bohannon faking beautifully on the option into the line of scrimmage to Bleacher, pulled the defense in, hesitated, stutter step, and this took the ball, tucked it underneath, ran off left guard, and goes down to the 25-yard line, a 25-yard scamper by Gordy Bohannon.
And Tom Nickel of Green Bay, Wisconsin, proved himself to be a Hawkeye hero once again as he iced the contest.
It'll be spotted on the 33-yard line, making it a 43-yard kick. Bohannon will hold. Nickel will kick. He kicks soccer style. He's made a couple of 50-yarders in high school. He's only a freshman. Okay, the ball is snapped. It's spotted. Nickel kicks it. It's long enough. Is it going to be good? It is good. Can you believe it? A new star comes on the Iowa horizon. That was a 43-yard field goal by freshman Tom Nickel. And don't say that he's not being embraced by Hayden Fry, because he is. Can you believe the score? Iowa 20, UCLA 7.
Right after that, fate really did smile on Iowa, as UCLA was once again denied a chance to handle the ball.
There's an onside kick, and the Hawkeyes recover the onside kick.
I think somebody has ruled that UCLA has. I think it's UCLA's ball on their own 48, Jim.
Well, I don't know. Those Iowa Hawks are awful jubilant. Let's see what's going to happen. They tried an onside kick. It has to travel over the 50-yard line. It bounced off a UCLA player. Of course, it's a free kick to begin with. And now they're debating it. It's Iowa's ball.
From that point on, the Hawkeyes managed to keep the UCLA offense in check. The final, Iowa 20, UCLA 7. And who could believe the best was yet to come?
Hayden, the Michigan game is one that I personally will never forget. I can remember Iowa teams of the past going up there, standing in back of me that day when you beat Michigan 9-7 at Ann Arbor, the 40th anniversary of the Tom Harmon team. Forrest Ebashevsky working with me, Tom Harmon standing in back, Fritz Chrysler on there, just a parade of legends. And then down on the field, you score that tremendous victory. That had to do something to you too, didn't it?
Well, certainly, Jim. It was a great, great win. But I'm going to be honest with you. It's probably a blessing that Hayden Fry and most of my coaches are not from this part of the country originally, because we weren't aware of the in-depth tradition and just really how difficult it would be to defeat Ann Arbor. We went about our game preparations and et cetera, other than setting up a Victrola during the workouts for crowd noise, knowing, being an old country boy from Texas, I knew that 105,000 folks would make a lot of noise. We went about the general preparation. We didn't get our guys uptight. We didn't tell them it was just nearly impossible to defeat the Wolverines at Ann Arbor or any place else for it, because we haven't been exposed to that. We came from another part of the country, and I've been to a lot of big dances in my lifetime. It was just another game. We knew we wanted to win it very badly, but the fact that we did pull it off, and since I have become more educated as to what we accomplished that day. Yeah, it's kind of spine-tingling now, but at the time it was just a football game for me and the troops. Otherwise, we'd never won it. How can a little freshman, Tommy Nichols, kick 3 consecutive field goals in front of 105 or 6,000 unless he's relaxed and it's just like he's been there before?
All doubts about how good this year's football Hawkeyes are were laid to rest back on October 17th in Ann Arbor, Michigan. The Hawks were rated 12th in the nation at that time, and they traveled to the largest college stadium in the nation to take on a Michigan Wolverine team that at that time was ranked number 5. A crowd of close to 106,000 on hand at Michigan's homecoming. This game became infamous because of Bo Schembechler's comments following the game. He complained about his team's lack of offense first of all, but then he blasted the officials for not seeing some plays his way. Ultimately, those plays might have been the single most important factor in preserving Iowa's win. Not that the officials were wrong, but those plays showed Iowa could win under pressure, a key to any successful football team. The Hawkeyes got the first break of the Michigan game when Iowa's Reggie Roby, who wound up with the nation's leading punting average of the year and all time, punted to the Wolverines following Iowa's first possession.
And here is the kick by Roby, and it carries down to about the 30-yard line, where it's picked up by Cooper. Cooper veers to the outside, fumbles the ball, recovered by Iowa. Cooper had the ball ripped away from him that time. He fumbled it, and the Hawkeyes fall on top of it, and so Iowa now has it. Dave Strobel, off the punt team, got that ball. A big break for Iowa.
But the Hawkeyes started in reverse gear following the fumble recovery, with quarterback Gordy Bohannon suffering a sack back to the Michigan 46. Bohannon made up for that a couple of plays later, however, with this pass to Ivory Webb down at the Michigan 11-yard line.
3rd down and 8 for the Iowa Hawks. Michigan goes into a 5-man front. Bohannon at quarterback. 2 flankers being used on the left side of the formation, and now Bohannon maybe traps, tries to run. He throws. It's complete.
But the Hawkeyes dug themselves a hole again as they picked up a delay of the game penalty, which placed the ball back on the Michigan 14. This was 2 plays after Webb caught the pass to give Iowa a first down on the Michigan 11. It was left up to freshman place kicker Tommy Nickel to save the drive with a 20-yard field goal.
Here comes the snap. It's spotted. The kick is up, and it looks good from here. It is good. I believe it is good. The Hawkeyes lead the Michigan Wolverines 3-0.
And there were 7 minutes, 11 seconds left in the first quarter. On Iowa's second possession, Bohannon found tight end Mike Hufford at the Michigan 36 for a 22-yard pickup.
Bohannon back to throw. He throws downfield. It's complete to Hufford. He dives forward to the 36-yard line. Mike Hufford reaching up, catching a fingertip pass.
The Hawkeyes' Jeff Brown carried the ball down to the Wolverine 19 on the next play, but again the drive stalled, and Tom Nickel made it 2 for 2 in the field goal kicking department that afternoon.
Tom Grogan will hold. The ball is put down, and the kick is long enough. Let's see if it's good. I believe it is good. It is good. Nickel on 2 field goals gives Iowa now a 6-0 lead.
At this point, there were about 2.5 minutes left in the first quarter, and it looked as if Iowa could simply rely on Nickel's foot if the drive stalled and the Hawkeyes were deep enough in Michigan territory. But as it turned out, the Hawks didn't score again until late in the third quarter, thanks once again to Tommy Nickel. The second quarter saw the game's only touchdown scored, a 17-yard pass from sophomore quarterback Steve Smith to wide receiver Anthony Carter. The play capped off a 10-play Wolverine drive.
Smith is back to throw, looks into the end zone, and it is a Michigan touchdown. Anthony Carter getting it back of Lou King. King misjudged the coverage that time and misjudged the speed of Carter, and Steve Smith just uncorked one of it, and Carter looked back, caught it over his shoulder, right in the corner of the end zone.
The conversion was good, and the Wolverines had their only lead of the day at 7-6. In fact, it was almost the only good thing the Michigan offense did that afternoon, as the Hawkeye defense, with some breaks, would turn the tide toward the Hawks in the end. In the third quarter, Michigan was driving quickly down the field on its first possession of the second half following an Iowa fumble. Quarterback Smith went for the kill on the 5th play of the drive, but the Hawkeye defense had other ideas.
Wolverines back to throw once again. Here's Smith. Scrambles around. Looks. Bullet pass is intercepted. The Hawkeyes have the ball in the end zone. Intercepted by Mel Cole. A deflected pass taken by the Hawkeyes.
Thus marked the start of a 10-play Hawkeye drive, which resulted in the points which kept Iowa on top the rest of the day against Michigan.
Nichols looking over the situation. He's made 2 field goals this afternoon. He'll be kicking against a wind of about 8 miles an hour now. Ball is spotted on the 20. Iowa can take the lead if this one is good. Snap is down. Kick is up. Looks like it's good from here. Is it good? It is good. The Hawkeyes take the lead. The kick is good. And Tom Nickel puts Iowa in front 9-7. How do you like that?
Well, the Hawkeye fans were loving it, and Wolverine fans were wondering what it took to get some points on the board. The fourth quarter really showcased the Iowa defense as the Hawkeyes stopped 3 separate Michigan drives. On the first drive, the Wolverines had advanced the ball from their own 13 to the Iowa 38. On a 4th down play, Anthony Carter tried a flea flicker pass to confuse the Hawkeyes secondary, but the Hawkeyes said, nothing doing.
Here's the pitch back going to Carter. Carter looks for somebody. He starts to run, and he is stopped. The Hawkeyes stop him. Carter trying to throw that football on a flea flicker. Couldn't find anybody open. He is stopped in his tracks. The Iowa defense rises to the occasion.
The second Michigan drive failed because the Wolverines tried to outflank the Hawkeye cornerbacks and almost got away with it.
Michigan now up to the line of scrimmage. The clock shows 4 minutes and 42 seconds, and it also shows Iowa leading 9-7. Back to throw is Smith. Little pass over there is complete up to the 46-yard line to Vince Bean. And Iowa is arguing that he was out of bounds. And I believe that Michigan, no, incomplete. At first they say complete, then the whole Iowa defensive secondary came over and said, wait a minute here.
Yeah, one official called it a completed pass on the 45-yard line, and he was overruled by the back judge.
And the third drive was stopped by a call which Michigan coach Bo Schembechler would curse in the locker room after the game.
First down, 1:46 to play. The ball is on the 44-yard line of Michigan. The Wolverines with the ball. Iowa leading 9-7. Smith is in there along with Woolfolk and Stanley Edwards. Smith back to throw once again. He throws, and it is complete to Vince Bean. 2 passes, have moved Michigan from their 32 down to the 38, but a flag is down on the field.
There's a penalty against Michigan.
A flag is down on the field as Bean holding against the Wolverines.
The pass, if completed, would have given Michigan a first down on the Iowa 38. As it was, after the officials consulted, Michigan wasted it down by throwing long for an incompletion. That made it 2nd and 25 for the Wolverines. Then they gained 15 of those yards back on 2 plays. Now there were just 51 seconds left in the game, with Michigan facing a 4th down at its own 40. It was a do-or-die situation for the Wolverines, and the Wolverines died in the grasp of Iowa defenders.
Smith at quarterback, 36 seconds to play. Smith is back once again, and they drag him. He throws the ball away. They drag him down. They drag Smith down. And that's the ball game. And that is the ball game, ladies and gentlemen. 31 seconds to go.
Hawkeyes took the ball, ran out the clock, and recorded their 3rd big victory of the year, a victory which put them in sole possession of first place in the Big Ten. But then came Iowa's darkest moments of the season, losing 2 straight games to Minnesota and Illinois. Those 2 losses almost put Iowa out of any hope for the Rose Bowl berth, but they came back strong against Purdue and placed themselves squarely in contention for the conference championship once again. We'll talk to Hayden Fry about the start of the dark days of 1981 and the drive for the championship after these words.
Hayden, then came the down part of the season. How did you feel after Minnesota? How did you feel after Illinois? To me, that's the most remarkable part of your personality and your coaching staff and your players, is that you were able to bounce back. Because I know in doing the shows with you how low you felt at that time.
Well, that's true, Jim. And if you'll recall, I tried to do everything I could to head the thing off. It was obvious that no team in America, because of about 5 or 6 consecutive weekends, the number 1 ranked team in the nation had been upset. It was apparent that everyone in the Big Ten was capable of beating everyone else. And I was trying to fortify my young men that it could happen to us, because I could see how proud and how happy they were in defeating the teams we defeated. And we should have defeated Minnesota. We should have defeated Illinois, but we didn't. And it was no surprise to me. The surprise was the fact that we could regroup after those 2 defeats and bounce back, and this took great leadership on the part of our members of our football team as well as our coaching staff to bounce back and to say to ourselves, really, hey, we didn't climb all the way to 6th in the nation, merit television coverage, be covered by Sports Illustrated, etc., without having had a real fine football team. We can still have a real good season. Let's go back and regroup and get our heads out of the cloud. You know, we've been embarrassed. We've been humiliated. We lost 2 games that we shouldn't have lost, and that's not taking anything away from Minnesota and Illinois, because on those days, just like the day against Iowa State, those people deserved to beat us. And we knew that, and we made an honest assessment. And I think because we weren't honest, that the young men finally accepted the fact that we could come back and win. And, of course, you know, that's what we did.
You certainly did, Hayden, in dramatic fashion. Was there one time that you felt before the Purdue game, hey, we're going to go out there and do it? Or were you apprehensive right up till game time?
Jim, I was very apprehensive. How can anyone predict what 18, 19, 20-year-old young men will do on any particular day, particularly when they've got this thing on their back of 20 losing seasons, 20 losing years to Purdue, and that was our opponent after those 2 losses. We're going to play Purdue, a team we had not defeated in 20 years, plus the fact that everyone is hoping and praying that we'll just have a winning season, just win one more game and be 6-5. And for us to go out and have Purdue down 30 points at the half was just truly unbelievable, and a great. To me, that is the most remarkable comeback against one of the better teams in the Big Ten. What we did that day will always remain in my mind as one of the greatest achievements in my coaching career.
Iowa's victory over Purdue this season was important for 3 reasons. First, it guaranteed the Hawkeyes their first winning season since 1961. Second, it broke a jinx of 20 consecutive losses to Purdue. And third, and most importantly, the win kept the Hawkeyes right in the thick of the fight for the Rose Bowl bid. Iowa went to work against Purdue right away, with the Hawks' Gordy Bohannon passing on the second play of the game to tight end Dave Moritz. Good for a 27-yard gain down to the Purdue 28.
Here's Bohannon. He rolls out, may decide to run with the ball. He throws downfield, and it is complete to Moritz on the 28-yard line. Moritz tackled by Tim Seneff. Dave Moritz, beautifully placed. He had a man in front of him, Evie, a man behind him. That was on the money.
Penalties stalled the Hawkeye drive, however, and so they settled for a field goal out of Tom Nickel.
Rogan will hold. Kick is up in the air. Is it going to be good? Let's see. It is good. Kind of a flat sidewinder kick, and we had to wait. The ball floated high, carried with the wind, went through the uprights. Iowa leads on a 42-yard field goal by Tom Nickel.
Following a Boilermaker punt, the Hawkeyes marched 59 yards in 7 plays for a touchdown. One of the key plays was a Bohannon completion to Jeff Brown at the Purdue 33, a 26-yard gain. That was followed 2 plays later by this Phil Blacher 20-yard scamper to give the Hawkeyes a first and goal.
Bohannon hands off this time. A big hole over the right side. Down to the 15, down to the 10. Phil Blacher still running. And he is out of bounds at the 9-yard line. Oh, did he run. And Evie, did he get some blocking out there. Tim Senup and Marcus McKinney. Blacher taking a handoff, running from the eye for the first time. Down to the 8-yard line. Goal to go, Hawkeyes.
And a couple of plays after that, Bohannon connected with tight end Dave Moritz for an apparent touchdown. And it was almost disaster time for the Hawkeyes, but Moritz was able to fall on his own fumble anyway.
Here's Bohannon. He throws to Moritz. Touchdown! No, he fumbles the ball. Let's see what's going to happen here. Had the ball. Bounced away from him. Iowa recovers. He was hit hard. Looked like he was right on the goal line. Was going to get in across the goal line, the plane to the goal. He was hit hard right on the goal by Derek Taylor. The ball popped away. He fell back on top of it.
On the next play, the Hawkeyes did put it in for 6.
4th down and goal to go on the 1-yard line. Iowa in the power I formation on the 1. Diving in, and it looks like he's across. It is a touchdown by Norm Granger. Hawkeyes score. Norm Granger diving in. It's Iowa 9 and Purdue nothing. Listen to the crowd.
Another Purdue drive went nowhere. In fact, almost every drive went nowhere for the Boilermakers against the stout Iowa defense that day. Iowa's defense played so well, in fact, that Purdue's outstanding flanker, Steve Bryant, was not even a factor in the game. Anyway, the Hawkeyes took Purdue's punt and put on an even more impressive drive of 9 plays and 82 yards. The Hawkeye passing game was clicking once again as Gordy Bohannon, who finished 9 of 18 against Purdue for 136 yards, hooked up with Phil Blacher on a pass play. Second, third, and fourth efforts allowed Blacher to get himself a few more yards on this play.
Bohannon now puts the team back into the shotgun. Spread formation, back to throw, has plenty of time. He looks, he throws upfield to Blacher. Blacher's at the 40-yard line and is up to the 45, breaks the tackle, and knocked out of bounds again at the 38-yard line of Purdue.
And 5 plays later, it was one of the most beautifully designed plays of the game, at least from the Hawkeye point of view, as Gordy Bohannon scored the first of his 2 touchdowns against Purdue.
Iowa now goes to the shotgun, the spread formation. Bohannon back, decides to run right down the middle. He's at the 5. It's a touchdown! Gordy Bohannon straight up the middle. Waltz is in there untouched for a touchdown, and can you believe it's Iowa 16 and Purdue nothing.
Believe it or not, Iowa quarterback Gordy Bohannon was the game's leading rusher with 63 yards against Purdue, and that draw play was planned all the way, no question about it. The first quarter came to an end a short time later. The Hawkeyes were well on their way to wiping out 20 years of frustration against the boys from West Lafayette, Indiana. The score after 15 minutes was Iowa 17, Purdue nothing. In the second quarter, Purdue's problems continued as the Hawkeye defense swarmed to block a punt deep in Purdue territory. The result was an Iowa touchdown.
And now he stands, Kinzer does, back on the 4-yard line in his own territory. And he gets a bad snap. He rushes. The kick is blocked. The Hawkeyes have it. And it looks like an Iowa touchdown. Let's see, is he in the end zone? I believe it's going to be an Iowa touchdown as they block the kick. It goes into the end zone, and we'll have to catch it. Is an Iowa touchdown as the Hawkeyes block the kick.
At this point, the score was Iowa 23, Purdue nothing. And barring a 1979 miracle comeback that Indiana enjoyed in the second half against Iowa, the game seemed to be in the bag. But the Boilermakers fought back, working their way down to the Iowa 1.5-yard line. The Boilermakers took a timeout to discuss what to do on the 4th down play coming up at that point, and it was here the Hawkeyes made the first of 3 amazing goal line stands against a Purdue offense which at that time had the nation's highest rated passer.
Big play here. The ball is right in between the 1 and 2 yard line. The scoreboard's calling it the 2 yard line. Actually, it's a little bit closer to the 1. So it's 4th down for Purdue and goal to go. Just shy of the 1 yard line. Scott Campbell lines his team up in the eye. Iowa obviously in a goal line defense. Campbell is going to go back to throw. He looks. He scrambles. He starts to run and he's tackled. He's tackled back on the 15-yard line. Brad Webb has as he was circling around, could not find anybody, and the Hawkeyes stopped the Purdue drive on the 14-yard line is where they spot the ball.
From that point on, Purdue just wasn't the same team. Their two subsequent possessions in the first half ended in interceptions. The first interception, which you'll hear now, led to the Hawkeyes' final touchdown of the half.
Back to throw, Campbell. It's intercepted. Simonson has the ball, and he's down to the 22-yard line. The Hawkeyes are going to call timeout.
The Hawkeyes took over at the Purdue 23 after Simonson's pickoff, and 2 plays later, Hawk quarterback Gordy Bohannon called his own number for the score.
It's the shotgun again with Bohannon. He looks, he tries to run down the middle, and he gets a touchdown! Touchdown, Iowa! Gordy Bohannon on the quarterback draw, goes into the end zone. The Hawkeyes score again on that same play, and it's Iowa 29 and Purdue nothing. Listen to the crowd.
On the next Purdue possession, Lou King intercepted for the Hawkeyes, and the half ended with Iowa on top by the incredible score of 30-0. The second half was a mopping-up operation for Iowa, as they blocked another Purdue punt, which resulted in Iowa's final points of the afternoon and twice stopped the Boilers inside the Iowa 10-yard line. In short, whereas Iowa's offense drew all the plaudits in the first half, it was now Iowa's defense would start in the second half. As I said, the block punt led to Iowa's final points of the day, courtesy the foot of Tom Nickel from 49 yards out.
He kicks it high and long. Let's see, it's good. Tommy Nickel kicks a 49-yard field goal, and it's now Iowa 33, Purdue nothing.
On Purdue's third possession of the second half, they drove down to the Iowa 7, knocking on the door of the Iowa goal line. But the Iowa defense made the save on the fourth down play.
Back to throw again. Scott Campbell rolls out, looks, may decide to run. He throws. It's batted down and almost intercepted. Jimmy Frazier batted the ball down. Tracy Crocker almost intercepted it. And listen to the applause the Iowa defense is getting.
Iowa took over but was shut out on offense. So, deep in its own territory, it looked as if the Hawkeyes would be giving Purdue good field position after the punt. But Hawkeye punter Reggie Roby, who ultimately had the highest average of any punter in recorded college football history for Division I schools, got off a boomer, a tremendous kick.
He gets the snap, takes his time, boots the ball. Look at that thing sail. Roby kicks it all the way down to the 15-yard line. Bryant takes it and is wrestled down at the 22-yard line. Reggie Roby, counting from where the ball left his foot, kicked that one about 80 yards in the air. Dave Strobel made the tackle. Bryant got it on the 15, ran it back to the 22. From scrimmage, it's the longest punt of the year. Roby's previous high, Erie, was 65. That was a 68-yard kick by Reggie Roby. And when you're doing things right, all things seem to fall into place.
So the Boilermakers, instead of starting near midfield, found themselves starting where they'd started most of the day anyway, around their own 20-yard line. That didn't deter Campbell and company from grinding downfield, and for the third time in the game, they got themselves inside the Iowa 10-yard line. But on a fourth down pass play from the Iowa 4, the Boilers again came up empty.
Campbell looks, throws a pass. It is incomplete, and the Hawkeye defense holds again. I can't believe it.
And I guess that was a pretty appropriate remark for me to make, considering how the game went. Purdue scored a meaningless touchdown later, and the final was Iowa 33, Purdue 7. The Iowa Hawkeyes faced up to the task of beating a good Wisconsin team on the road, winning by 10, 17-7. The win allowed Iowa to have a chance of going to the Rose Bowl, provided they beat Michigan State at home the following week and that Ohio State beat Michigan. A seemingly improbable set of circumstances, but we all know what happened. The Iowa offense sparkled in the first half against Wisconsin, rolling up a 17-0 lead over the Badgers. And the Hawkeye defense, which was spectacular all season long, was especially so against Wisconsin. The game started as a defensive struggle, with Iowa finally breaking through for a field goal on its second possession of the first half.
The ball is kicked, and it's long enough. Let's see if it's going to be good. It is good. The Hawkeyes take the early lead of 3-0 over the Wisconsin Badgers.
Shortly afterward, the game became sloppy as Wisconsin or Iowa exchanged the ball on fumbles or interceptions on 4 straight possessions. Early in the second quarter, however, the Hawks' sluggish offensive machine came roaring back to life following 2 penalties. On a 2nd and 25 from the Iowa 39, Hawkeye signal caller Gordy Bohannon airmailed it out to tight end Dave Moritz. And 2 plays later, Phil Bleacher scored the first of his 2 touchdowns.
But diving into the end zone for a touchdown is Phil Bleacher.
On Wisconsin's possession following the Iowa touchdown, Iowa's outstanding nose guard Pat Dean recovered a fumble to set up the Hawkeyes' final score against the Badgers.
3rd and 5 at their own 40-yard line. They're in the I formation, and here's a handoff going around the right side. Fumble recovered by Iowa. Hawkeyes have it on the Wisconsin 30-yard line. Wisconsin had the ball ripped away from him. That was Marvin Neal coming around the corner, taking a handoff, Evie, on what was supposed to be a Statue of Liberty or draw play, and Pat Dean, number 58, was in there, recovers the fumble. Great defensive play by the Hawks again.
And 7 plays later, it was Bleacher again for the Hawkeyes.
Goal to go, Hawkeyes. 3rd down. They're on the Wisconsin 2. 7:38 left to play in a dramatic first half here at Camp Randall Stadium, Madison, Wisconsin. Power I formation with the strength going to the right side of the line. And now, handoff, and it looks like a touchdown, and it is a touchdown.
And Iowa went on to win 17-7, putting themselves in contention for the impossible dream, going to Pasadena on New Year's Day. We'll be back to talk to Hayden Fry about his thoughts before that big Michigan State game right after these words.
Hayden, I personally thought, Muddy Waters stated it better than I did. He said, Hayden Fry's team, the Iowa team today, threw us around like cordwood out there. He said, you just totally dominated. From my standpoint, at 32 years of broadcasting, in games leading up to Rose Bowls before, I don't think, with the elements involved on the field at Ann Arbor, I've ever sat through or broadcast a more dramatic last 5 minutes of a game than the last 5 minutes of that Michigan State game. Can you, in the calmness now, can you recount your feelings of those moments?
Well, Jim, it goes back early in the game because Ohio State and Michigan had started on television maybe an hour and a half or so before we started, and it was going to be obvious that we'd know the outcome of that game if Ohio State defeated Michigan and we defeated Michigan State in our game that day. We would be in the Rose Bowl. And, the reaction of the crowds throughout the first half, every time a big roar would go up, it was pretty obvious to me something good was happening at the Ohio State-Michigan game because, you've heard me tell this story about walking over to the fellow behind the bench and asking him, he was listening to a little transistor radio, and I asked him, I said, how's it going? And, he just kind of shook his head. He couldn't believe that in the course of the game I'd walk over. We had some time to go before the half, maybe 4 or 5 minutes. And to make a long story short, the guy just couldn't tell me anything except that one team was ahead 14-9 or something like that right before the end of the game. And I asked him which team, and he didn't know. And I asked him who had the ball, and he said the team that's ahead.
The Hawkeyes wasted no time in holding up their end of the Rose Bowl bargain against Michigan State. The result of the game was never in doubt, not even from the game's first play.
1st and 10, they have a man in motion, and now here's Clark back. He's rushing, he passes, and is hit and fumbles the football. Let's see, they're going to call it a completed pass. I believe they are. The ball is squirting around, goes out of bounds, and I think it's going to be Iowa's football. It is Timachek, the tight end, and he was hit hard out there.
And on Iowa's second play from scrimmage, Iowa's Phil Bleacher, who had a magnificent day rushing with 247 yards, scored the first of his 2 touchdowns.
Drive right down the middle this time into the end zone. Goes Phil Bleacher, number 28.
Michigan State's second possession didn't go very well for them either. They started on their own 24, fumbled, lost 3 yards because of it, then got a break when Iowa was declared guilty of roughing the kicker on a Spartan punt. On the play right after the rough, Iowa's Lou King, one of the nation's top pass thieves, came through again.
Back to throw is Clark. He throws the bomb downfield, and it is intercepted. Intercepted by Lou King.
That interception didn't lead to any Hawkeye points, however, as a 4th down gamble from the Spartan 22 failed to pick up the necessary yardage. Michigan State took over, but again, Iowa's defense made the scoreboard lights blink as James Erb recorded 2 more points for the Hawks.
So Mozienko standing back on the 14-yard line. Jeff Brown, last time he tried this, he was roughed and gave Michigan State life. 4th down and 4. Spartans now a high pass. Mozienko kicks. The ball is blocked. It goes into the end zone and out of the end zone. The Hawkeyes block the kick once again. James Erb, maybe the fastest man in the Iowa defensive setup, Evie, got through, caught the ball in mid-flight, and batted it back. The kick block goes into the end zone.
It's a safety. 2 points for Iowa. Now they lead 9-0, and Michigan State will have to kick off to the Hawkeyes from its own 20-yard line.
The safety meant that Michigan State had to kick off to Iowa. And after a Glenn Buggs return to the Michigan State 47, quarterback Gordy Bohannon and company went to work on a 12-play, 53-yard drive, capped off by an Eddie Phillips dive on a 4th and goal from the 1.
4th down, goal to go on the 1-yard line. Iowa in the power formation. Double tight ends, John Alt and Mike Hufford are in there. And now the snap into the end zone, and it looks like he got it. Eddie Phillips in the end zone. Number 18, Eddie Phillips gets the touchdown, going over left guard. The Hawkeyes now leading Michigan State 15-0, and listen to the crowd.
And at the end of one quarter, the Hawkeyes were well on their way to meeting the requirement number 1 for getting to the Rose Bowl, as they led Michigan State 16-0. But Ohio State had to tie or beat Michigan in order for the Hawkeyes to go to the Rose Bowl. And early in the second quarter, the news was very good for Hawkeye fans.
A final score from Ann Arbor, 14-9. Ohio State beats Michigan. Final score. So now, talk about controlling the destiny. And when that announcement is made over the PA, Turkey the Hawk is going wild. Heavy, the Hawkeye team controls its own destiny right now.
Well, that's right, Jim. Ohio State would go in the event of a tie here, but the way the ball game's going, there doesn't seem to be much possibility. Iowa with a 16-point lead right now.
When we finally did find out that Ohio State had won, then I've never had anything really scare me as badly, because we have traditionally, at least since I've been here, not played well under pressure. And knowing that now we had our own destiny in our hands, I was scared to death in this, and you could see the rumbles, the crowd, and hollering down and telling their players that Ohio State had won, and I could hear these things. I could just see us folding our tent and Michigan State winning the ball game. And as you know, they made a heck of a drive and put points on the board right at the half. We're ahead 16-7. And at the halftime, I don't know I've ever entered a dressing room trying to be more precise or careful in the selection of my words to say to the team, to try to get across to them that we had to win the game the second half, but yet do it in such a manner that they wouldn't feel the pressure. It was a very, very delicate situation, and the first thing I did was have the young men go into the dressing room, and I left them alone for 7 or 8 minutes while I got with my staff to make sure that none of the staff took for granted that we had that game won, and that they coached just like the game was 0-0, and they covered every minute detail, particularly things that Michigan State had hurt us with just prior to the half, and moving the ball, that we made adjustments to stop that, and also from an offensive standpoint, how valuable it would be to have some long, sustained drives, whether we put points on the board or not, just to keep the ball away from, at that time, the most explosive college offense in America. And once we got that down, I recall I told the coaches what I'd do to them if they went out that door and they seemed to be excited or anything of that nature. I wanted everyone to be cool, calm, and collected, and to play the game just like it was 0-0. And fortunately, that's exactly what happened.
The Hawkeyes stormed onto the field in the second half with blood in their eye and a Rose Bowl berth in their hip pocket. Michigan State's offense was stymied the rest of the afternoon, and all upset hopes virtually vanished when the Spartans, looking to make a close ball game out of it early in the third quarter, were intercepted by Tracy Crocker at the goal line.
Third down, goal to go, Michigan State on the Iowa 6-yard line. And now Clark is back once again, and he looks, he throws into the end zone. Intercepted! The Hawkeyes have the ball! It's intercepted! Iowa has it out at the 17-yard line. Tracy Crocker intercepted! Iowa runs it back to the 17. The crowd goes wild.
That was the last serious threat the Spartans put up offensively the rest of the afternoon. The rest of the game was anticlimactic. After the game, Coach Hayden Fry talked of how fortunate he and his Hawkeyes were to be going to Pasadena.
What a wonderful, wonderful feeling. What a happy, happy bunch of young men, the Iowa Hawkeyes, and a fantastic coaching staff, and the greatest fans in the world. We put it all together with the help of the good Lord and the Ohio State Buckeyes, and we're going out where they play the granddaddy of them all.
The Hawkeyes were helped along, of course, by the fact that Ohio State beat Michigan in Ann Arbor, And Fry reminded everybody that the traditional way to determine the Rose Bowl Big Ten representative, that is to say just wait and see who would win the Michigan-Ohio State game, wasn't quite the whole story this year.
Well, I'd like to extend my personal thanks to Mr. Schembechler up in Michigan. In fact, I took time to read the quotes prior to the game to our football team, and it's just amazing that they could believe that was the only game. The Michigan ball game in Ohio State was the only one that had any meaning. It was just like we weren't in the race at all. We weren't in the hunt. All of this stuff about it's just like it used to be. It's still a Big Two. It's still going to be settled between Michigan and Ohio State. And maybe when Mr. Schembechler wakes up in the morning, he'll find out that Iowa is the one going to the Rose Bowl and not the Wolverines.
Back with final questions for Hayden Fry after these words.
Hayden, we'll let you go, but right now, coming up later on this afternoon, the Rose Bowl. What thoughts are going through your mind? Do you go back to maybe even your childhood or maybe your early beginnings as a coach? Because I know in playing football, people have said, well, if I could ever play in the Rose Bowl, if I could, most people don't even see a Rose Bowl, if I could ever play there, if I could ever coach there, and here you are.
Well, Jim, that's the toughest part about this job. You fight, work, plan all your life to get to the ultimate, the Rose Bowl. That is, from a coaching professional standpoint, this is the ultimate. And now then, I find myself fighting so that it's not really that great. I've got to keep everything in perspective. It's just another ball game, and I have to make my talks to the players. It's just another game. It's not life or death. And yet inside, we want to win so badly that we have to be prepared, and we have to make the right calls at the right time. We have to run the right defenses at the right time. Everything has to be perfect to win this ball game. We know that because Washington has a fantastic football team. It's a real delicate line between being too exacting, too demanding, making it too pressurized, as being too relaxed, too easygoing, too lackadaisical. It has to be a blend of both for this particular football team, the Iowa Hawkeye football team of 81, because they've already proven they're a unique group of young men.
And Hayden, you're a very unique man that's guiding a unique group of young men. Good luck to you today, and you've given us a marvelous, personal, intimate account of the road to the Roses. Good luck, Hayden.
Thank you, Jim.
So the Hayden Fry era is with us and will reach full flower with the appearance of the Hawkeyes in the Rose Bowl against the Washington Huskies, a game we'll be bringing you play-by-play on WHO Radio this afternoon. The beginning of one era always means the end of another. And what better way to signify that than to hear it firsthand from the man who led Iowa to 2 Rose Bowl victories and who will be working with us on our own broadcast later today, Forrest Evashevsky.
When we got the invitation to go to the Rose Bowl, we showed it up here against Ohio State in the dressing room. After the elation and the exuberance died down, one of the kids said, I hope we've heard the last of the Iron Men. And I think today, if they walk off this field victorious, I think that's going to go through their mind. We've heard enough of the Evie era, and let's start in an era of our own, and I hope that comes true this afternoon.
And, of course, Evie's prophecy came true. And now we know the Hawkeyes are going to the Rose Bowl. Kickoff is minutes away, so keep your dial set right here on WHO Sports Radio. This is Jim Zabel.
As we know now, fate did not smile on the Hawkeyes that New Year's Day afternoon in Pasadena as they lost to Washington 28-0. But the accomplishments of the 1981 regular season will live on forever as Iowa football finally emerged from the shadows and took its place
as a regular contender in the Big Ten.